You're listening to SaskScapes, a podcast featuring the stories of arts, culture, and heritage in Saskatchewan. If you ever find yourself at a party where a game of Saskatchewan music trivia is being played, this is the guy you want on your team. Roll up your sleeves and let's play a game of Guess the Guest. Here's a few hints. He made countless appearances on national news and local media in print, radio, and television, named a member of CBC's Future 40. In 2013 and 14, Prairie Dog magazine voted him the second best Twitter feed in Regina, as well as one of the top best Facebook friends. He's a media commentator, music promoter, and is driven by passion, motivation, community involvement, and volunteerism. If you guessed Taron Cochrane, you're right. I'm Kevin Power, and through much determination, emails, and phone calls, I finally got to sit down with Taron this summer in Regina. We met at the newly opened salon, studio, and gallery space in Regina called The Junction. And later in this episode, you'll meet The Junction's owner, Christina, and learn a bit about how her dream came to be. And because he touches so many aspects of the community, Taron has made his own mark on the space by creating the music playlist to reflect The Junction's vibe. This episode is a bit of a 6 degrees of Taron game as I think about the few lines I can draw between Taron, the SaskScapes theme music, which is Jeffrey Straker's Slings and Arrows, and the band In With the Old, who were interviewed in episode 56. I'm willing to bet there are many in the province who could play their own game of 6 degrees of Taron, because that's just how involved this guy is. So I am sitting in this bright sunny day in Regina in a very funky space called The Junction, which I'm looking at a sign that says, "We're now open, wowee." They've just been open for 2 days. It's a very cool space, salon, artist studio space. Christine is at the helm running this baby, which has been her dream, and maybe we'll get a word out of her eventually. But sitting beside me here is somebody that, well, it's taken months and months and months to finally hook up. I first became aware of Taron Cochrane on CBC when you were talking about the festival. Was it Momart?
Yeah, All Folked Up in Momart.
That's right.
Yep.
And I think you were playing on CBC In With the Old.
Yes.
And I loved that group, and subsequently I've met them and they're on the podcast.
Yeah, that's great.
Right. So then I thought, I got to talk to this guy. And I think we emailed, and I sent you the link to the podcast, and you said, cool that you're using Jeffrey Straker's Slings and Arrows. And I said, but why is that cool? So it turns out, for fans of the podcast who have just heard the theme music, that is not a synthesized horn that you're hearing. That is Taron Cochrane.
How are you doing?
Hey.
For the record, I was mimicking a horn player, but the great thing about the video too was that when we recorded it, if you actually watch it, my dog is featured in the video as well too. So it was a great concept that Jeff had, featuring some local musicians and local talent, and it focuses on Regina and the Warehouse District too. So.
But what were you playing?
Oh, it was a trumpet, but I was pretending.
Okay, all right.
Pretending to play a trumpet.
Right, as I was thinking about how I wanted to introduce you, and I thought, well, I'm pretty sure it's a trumpet, but a part of me wants to say it's a horn.
Oh, no, yes.
So
trumpet,
you accomplished it.
Well, I faked it.
Well,
but if you watch it, hopefully it looked real.
Yeah, it did. It looked real. And the dog did too.
Right? That was his debut. He's pretty excited about it.
What's the dog's name?
Winston Brown. So he took after his mother's last name. So he's our firstborn.
And your secondborn would be Etta.
That's right. Yeah, I have a 3-year-old daughter named Etta. Yeah, she is a sunshine in my days, and she's big into music and dancing. She started ballet class, and she's a little ray of sunshine. She's always coming up with creative, unique stories to tell mom and dad, and I love her to pieces. So
That's cool. Love that name.
Yeah, thank you very much. When we came up with the concept for our name, it was a matter of, I grew up with obviously a unique original name my mother came up with. My sister's name is Dana. And with my daughter, it was just a matter of, certainly not necessarily after Etta James, but we just thought it sounded great and it worked well.
So speaking of growing up, you obviously did that, but where did you do it?
I grew up in the town of Strasbourg, Saskatchewan, which is about 45 minutes north of Regina, about half hour north of Craven. A small prairie town. I grew up on a farm, not so much a farm full of animals and wildlife, but a farm nonetheless, eventually moving into town. I grew up in an environment of sports and farming and a lot of hard work, but not so much music, So as I started getting older, in my teen years, I fell in love with punk rock. I was that one token guy in the town that had the pink mohawks and the septum piercings. And, but as I got older and as I moved to a city center like Regina, I started to notice that there was much more of a musical hub in a bigger city and so much going on. And hence my involvement now with Sask Music and so many different bands and artists, because I really can't get over the fact that there is so much talent right here at home. But we are starting to see, and you talked about In With the Old, who is a band from northern Saskatchewan. We are starting to see all these great initiatives and great programs and things happening at small towns where music is going to the rural areas, which I think is exceptionally important.
Yeah. Yeah. Your background is really eclectic, but I was trying to sum up what I would call you. You're sort of a walking Wikipedia of all things festival and music in this province.
Yeah.
You've been the voice of festivals on CBC this summer.
I was, and that was a great honor to go on CBC and talk about summer music festivals and highlight some of the bands I thought people should definitely check out. My musical background, I grew up around polka music. My grandparents loved polka. The Melva Rhythmaires were gods in Strasbourg, and when they came to town, that was a big thing. Obviously, the old time country music was a big thing growing up, and then I fell in love with punk rock. I had a sister who was into hair metal. I'm Irish and Scottish descent, so I have the Irish music and the Scottish music. Yeah. And then obviously as you get older, I've always found that when you're a teenager and when you're younger, you're very, very close-minded when it comes to music. But as you get older, you start to open up your mind and realize things such as Neil Diamond is a fantastic singer. And that is bar none. I mean, it's almost a fact of reality. This morning I was listening to Anne Murray, Canada Songbird. You can't argue that. So, and then recognizing the talent here at home in our own backyards, just being involved with Sask Music and different initiatives throughout the years. There is exceptional talent in this province, in this city, and it's covering all genres. There's metal, there's folk, there's bluegrass, there's rock, there's pop. The hip hop scene is very vibrant in Regina. Even the underground punk rock and hardcore scene is doing very well. So,
right. Are you making it to the majority of these festivals? How many of you are there?
There is, I've made it. I took my family on a few road trips. I did MC at Gateway Music Festival. I did help them out with their social media and PR as well too through the summer. So we definitely went down to Gateway. Regina Folk Festival, of course. I was honored again to be involved as a volunteer MCing. Not all the festivals. Summertime weekends and family, it's a hard shuffle. Live shows, though, I try to get as much as I can, do as many live shows as I can. But the problem I face is I have a friend who actually runs a website called Music Regina Live, and he takes all the live shows in Regina and he culminates them into one website. So you can go and see, okay, tonight there's going to be 7 shows. But the problem is that some nights, and you don't really realize it until you kind of peel back the curtain and see, but some nights there's 9 shows in Regina. So to getting out to all of those, there's been a couple nights where we've done a great trek and seen a lot, but it is really hard to make it out to all these things. But it's so great to see that vibrancy and the fact that our music scene is doing so well that they can put on so many shows. At one time, it would be hard for people to list off successful Saskatchewan bands. I mean, in the past, obviously Northern Pikes, nowadays Sheepdogs, you got Colin James and a lot of those hit makers, kick acts back in the day. But nowadays, I mean, you're starting to see more artists from Saskatchewan hit the international stage. And I think it starts at home, it starts in Saskatchewan and getting that support and getting those shows going. So people are aware of who you are, opens the door for the festivals. And then they play the festivals and you have a captive audience of, for example, with Gateway, you have 3,500 people, watching the Dead South play. And now they're playing, over in Tennessee. They were just in Germany. They're going back to, so it's great to see that growth with these young bands.
All right. This is a sweepingly general statement, but I think it's no unknown fact that I think Canada suffers a little bit from an inferiority complex as far as star making power that we have here versus if you want to make it, you've got to go south of the border. Do you think that still holds true?
Yeah, I think, I think a lot with Canadian music and Saskatchewan music, there's a humbleness. I mean, we're not the first ones to get out there and say that we're the best bands in the world. But the fact of the matter is, when you have bands like the Dead South, they've never played Tennessee before. They played their first show in Tennessee, and they completely packed the place. I mean, you have to take into account that there's that's just some raw talent. But they're so humble about it. You would never hear those guys talk about the fact that they think they're the greatest because they just went and played Europe for a week and sold out every single show. And it's great to see, that humbleness. Does it affect our industry and our music scene a little bit? I think so, because we're not as headstrong to getting our name out there, like trying to break it into the States. But I find that nowadays, with bands such as the Dead South and other bands are doing very well. And Dino Sun's World Music Group from Regina just did a fantastic tour of Quebec City or in Quebec. But I think that we're breaking out in our own different ways. You look at bands like Rah Rah, who are grabbing national attention and who are getting great support from CBC and other organizations. Bands like Library Voices who are doing exceptionally well. But you also have bands, smaller bands like In With The Old that are just teenagers that are playing these fantastic shows.
And they're really good.
I know. But it's great to see. The cool thing too is that you look at, so while we don't seek the festival stages in the States for 40,000 people, when you do have a band like the Dead South, before they went to Europe, they actually grabbed In With The Old and a young Americana roots artist from Swift Current named Coulter Wall to open up for them, because knowing the band knew that they would sell out the venue. And knowing that, they purposely grabbed young talent to showcase them. So it's a camaraderie almost. So I think we're more focused now on helping each other out. And there's more of a unity in our music industry than so much as success, because it's kind of the philosophy of, all for one or one for all, right? So, which I think is great. And it's good to see that happen. And you see bands, when you went to Borealis Music Festival and you
amazing,
right? And you did the podcast.
First year.
Right?
Hit it out of the park.
Yeah. And you had a band like the Andino Sons, and the people standing in, front of the row were the Dead South, because it's that unity we have. So yeah, I think there's less focus now on making it big and getting on a record label and touring the country, and more on producing quality music and really growing our internal industry that we have here in Saskatchewan.
And I think the European market is far more receptive to an international sound. They embrace a lot of Canadian talent. I mean, Rock Cuisine has a huge
exactly right
in Europe.
Yeah, and here it's not so much noted, right? You look at somebody like country artist JJ Voss from QPAR originally, now in Regina, but he just got back from Germany and Ireland, and the crowds were wonderful. I mean, they treated him like a king, and he plays here and he does very well in the small towns here and very receptive, but nowhere near the acclaim and the celebration that he gets over there, because they really do embrace the Saskatchewan music. And I think that's great for us and great for everybody, really.
Right. Do we have a Saskatchewan sound, do you think?
No, I've heard that question a lot. If we were the birthplace of, for example, Seattle is recognized as the birthplace of grunge, from the success of bands like Nirvana and Pearl Jam and Soundgarden. I think it'd be safe to say that in the 90s, certainly, areas like Vancouver and British Columbia were definitely a punk rock hub, bands like Gob and SNFU and stuff like that coming out of there. I guess SNFU was at Edmonton, but you get the drift. Yeah. But there really isn't a definitive Saskatchewan sound. As much as it would be easy to fall back and say country music, because the rural areas do certainly love the country and the bluegrass and the roots. There really isn't. We are so diverse, and I think that's what makes us special, is that is so much variety, and it's not variety where it's a semi decent talent. It is a variety, and there's people that do exceptionally well. So
back to you. Weren't you named one of the top 40 under 40?
I was, a couple of years ago. Thank you very much. Yeah, CBC Saskatchewan our Future 40 top.
Future 40, right? Yeah.
Top 40 leaders, success stories, and change makers in the province of Saskatchewan under the age of 40. So what were you being noted for?
Hey, it's Kevin. I hope you're enjoying the episode so far. Just a quick reminder that the SaskScapes podcast is available for free on your favorite podcast app, or you can stream it from your browser. Check out the show notes for the link. On the SaskScapes homepage, you'll notice something new under the logo called SaskScapes Plus. You can't miss it. There's a big button saying support with a heart icon next to it. I'd love it if you could click on that button and help keep this podcast series going. When SaskScapes launched in May 2014, it was the first podcast in the province celebrating arts, culture, and heritage. In fact, you'd have been pretty hard-pressed to find any Saskatchewan podcasts. So I'd like to think that we paved the way. It's been because of your support that this podcast is now in its 9th year. Okay, that's it. Enjoy the rest of the episode.
I think my music industry involvement, I'm also an active volunteer. I've been a volunteer with North Central Community Association Street Fair the last 3 years, involved in a lot of various music projects. I'm involved with Telemiracle each year. I'm doing helping out with the social media, being on the social media team. I was on-air correspondent this year alongside Jeff Straker.
Yeah, I saw him there.
See, everything goes in a circle.
Yeah.
And then as well, too, a lot of other initiatives around the province and stuff. I always get involved in a lot of volunteer activities. And a lot of the stuff I do inside the music industry is all volunteer, just out of a pure passion. Dedicate a lot of my free time to whether it be freelance writing or to radio or television or talking about local artists or social media or any kind of PR work or promotion and stuff. A lot of it is volunteer work. So I was kind of being recognized for that.
What did you want to be when you grew up?
When I was younger, I wanted to be an artist. I'm a cartoonist, which not a lot of people know.
Oh.
But I can draw cartoons. So I used to spend prior to the internet. Now, although Apple just introduced the Apple Pencil yesterday, a lot of people may not know that at one time the pencil was the main form of communication.
Right, absolutely.
So when I was younger, I would spend all my free time drawing. There was no internet. There was no distractions. Drawing. And, my mother would put on the oldies station on the radio and I would just draw cartoons. And I aspired to be somewhat of a designer. And I was a graphic designer for bands in my early 20s. I'd pay the bills. A lot of that was volunteer again. And I'd pay the bills by working the random day jobs. But, I wanted to draw. I grew up on Archie comics but music got its hooks in me. And for example, I've been involved with Music Heals recently as well, too, as an ambassador in Saskatchewan, and just seeing the power of music. You can't put a price on a good song. I mean, it can completely shift in your emotions, your day.
Tell me about what they do.
Oh, sure. Music Heals is a nonprofit charitable organization based out of Vancouver. It was started by a gentleman by the name of Chris Brandt. What they do is they provide money funding. They raise money and provide money to people that need it at hospitals, at-risk youth, senior centers, palliative care, any kind of music therapy programs. Some of the initiatives they have, which is implemented now in Regina, is they have an iPod pharmacy. So what you do is you provide them with a used iPod, and they will refurbish it in the sense of putting specific music on it. They do have a sponsorship with a headphone company. They'll provide brand new headphones, and they give them to people at rehabilitation centers. That is one. There's also, they put on a Strike a Chord benefit concert with a lot of notable bands. They're actually a great organization. They actually have a video talking about the power of music with artists such as Walk Off the Earth, Dan Mangan, Biff Naked. They've just put out a signature beer in Vancouver that with Prevail from a band called the Swollen Members hip hop group. They do a lot of that work, and how they got involved in Saskatchewan is I've teamed up with the Wolf 104.9 FM in town here, and we've held these Queen City Rocks concerts every year. Now, a lot of people may not know it, but there's over 260 active artists and bands in Regina alone, let alone the province.
Right.
So the Wolf put on essentially a battle of the bands, and they would receive over 40 local rock bands would apply to play this event every year, and they got some great sponsorships, great opportunities for the artists. It was not only great exposure, but these artists are getting money, they're getting equipment, they're getting studio time, they're getting venue time, and it was in support of Music Heals. And this year, alongside some other events that they put on a night out for Music Heals on March 7th, where local venues agreed that if anybody visited them, $1 would go towards music therapy programs. So we actually ended up giving $2,000 to SCEP, which is an organization for music therapy for children. Children, whether they have behavioral problems or issues at home or anything like that, they actually have a music therapy program. And actually, the Music Therapy Association of Saskatchewan put on a concert too called Music Makes Me Bloom through Music Heals, in support of Music Heals and Music Counts and some other great organizations. And even at the Wascana Rehabilitation Center in town here, they have great music therapy programs, whether it's a Aboriginal drum circle with iPads, or it's actually having...
Really? They all play... They've got like drum apps?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. And actually, a close friend of mine is in Wascana Rehab, and he's in a wheelchair. And his dad was a drummer, and he always wanted to play drums. And he wanted to also write a letter to his father to kind of build a stronger relationship with him. So what he did was he worked with his therapist, and he played drums, and they wrote a song for his dad. And they performed it on Telemiracle a couple of years ago. So, wow. Yeah, it's quite fascinating. So a lot more music therapy initiatives going on here. And the Music Makes Me Bloom concert I referred to is basically people that were receiving music therapy actually performed. So it was a concert from music therapy recipients. So it was great to see. Wow. And, it goes to show you that it's a caring community. Music Heals has noted this before, but they can't get over the amount of support they've received from Regina with music therapy initiatives. And that is something, with the Night Out for Music Heals, when I put the call out for venues to be on board, it was a matter of minutes, and venues are sort of course, were on board to help out. So that's it shows you not only the music community, but the heart and passion found in our community here at home is quite something.
So knowing the power of music, why are we constantly up against music programs being axed in schools? And
that's a great question. I don't know. I can tell you firsthand, I had more exposure to music when I was younger. Probably wouldn't have shaped where I ended up, but it might have started it earlier. I might have been getting involved in music 15 years ago as opposed to now, right? So I think it's so important. I know with my own daughter, playing music for her and getting her involved in music and learning, singing songs and how happy dancing makes her is such an important thing. But yeah, I don't know why. It's kind of sad. I guess it's the same question could be asked for, when you have a beautiful heritage building that really tells the story of a town. Why?
Yeah.
Tear it down.
Yeah.
Maybe structural issues or whatnot. But I think sometimes though it may come down to the fact of participation. I grew up near a town it's a hamlet of Beaulieu. Beaulieu's high school became non-existent at one point because there just wasn't enough kids. You have a town like Govan where they have 3 students graduate. So to put a music program in place might be hard, but I have seen in the past where organizations like OSAC have done these fantastic tours, and they continue to do these showcase tours where they send artists around to these small towns.
Yeah, great program.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Because then all of a sudden you have an artist like JJ Voss going to 20 towns across Saskatchewan and showing people that, you know what, if you play guitar and you work hard at it and you put in that time and practice, you could be standing up there as well. And you could be going to Germany. You could be playing all this great music and putting out an album and reaching these goals that you have set for yourself. But yeah, it starts really at the root, and that is getting people familiar with how powerful music can be.
You said you grew up in a very much a sports environment in your town, so you were a bit of a lone wolf, no matter perhaps what genre you chose,
exactly.
Mohawk aside.
Yeah.
So, we tend to associate sports and rec programs as being integral to a community. Did you not have anything in the arts vein happening when you grew up?
There was organ lessons.
Right, through the local church.
Yeah. And I took them for about a week. I learned when the scenes come marching in.
Right.
And that was it for me. Organ wasn't my thing, but not a lot. But, I guess I can see why they do focus on sports, because physical activity is important.
Sure.
It's important for your brain. It's important for your heart and everything, right? So, but there's tie-ins nowadays too. Sports and music there's a correlation between sports and music and the importance of music at sporting events and getting all that tied in together. I mean, I think you can really tie in art and recreation together well. But I think there should be more avenues. We look at a guy, we'll go back to talking about Jeffrey Straker. I mean, had Jeffrey Straker not sought piano playing while in Punishai.
Right, yeah, right.
He wouldn't be playing, he wouldn't be winning awards, overseas, and he wouldn't be playing all these fantastic shows around the country and, being one of the biggest pianists we have in the city, right? So, which I think is fantastic. So I'm glad he followed that route. But I think Jeff would have been in the same situation where maybe playing hockey wasn't for him.
Right.
And he found his passion, which thankfully was piano. So I think it's important. But the Regina Symphony Orchestra, for example, does a fantastic job of showcasing. They had the Music on the Road series where they actually have the chamber players go to a town And not only will they play a concert at night, but that afternoon they would go to the school and to kind of get kids' interest in classical music, which is a hard sell because nowadays there's more Justin Bieber fans than Ron's List. I mean, that's just the reality.
Yeah, so we're here to talk about music.
Right? So what they would do is, but they would actually show these kids, they would tell you a really cool, interesting, fun fact about the music they're going to play. So they talk about Beethoven, then they play a Beethoven piece. And showing kids that, you can make a career out of music, which I think is another common struggle too, because, with the success hockey has had in the province of Saskatchewan and growing professional hockey players, if you're a parent and you have an option of spending X amount of dollars and your kid or child may have an opportunity to have a career in hockey and travel or spend an excessive amount of money on music, but they may never pick it up again.
Right.
That may sway the vote, but I think as long as people are aware nowadays that there are opportunities in music.
Yeah.
When you have organizations like Sask Music who are providing workshops and training and guidance in a career in the music industry, there are opportunities. I wouldn't say I'm not paying my mortgage with my passion for music, but it's certainly helping me out in my career. Right. Just by following that, guys like Jeff Straker, back to the Dead South, JJ Voss. As we speak right now, there's currently 8 country artists in Saskatchewan performing at Canadian Country Music Week events right now in Halifax, representing our province. And those are all small town, whether it be Alec Runyons from Kipling, Saskatchewan, to Lisa Moen from just north of Saskatoon and many others, Samara Young from Yorkton. I'm sure at one time they played sports and they probably had a passion for music, but thought, I'll never really, have an opportunity to do anything with this. And now they're representing our province, way down east, which I think is wonderful.
Yeah. Do you have a band of your own now in the midst of all of this?
No, I don't. I don't really play much instruments. I think you think I would by this point, but I don't. I really should start a band, but I don't even know where I'd start. But
yeah, but you got to have some hours to sleep, right?
Exactly. Yeah, it's hard. I actually started taking guitar lessons. There's a gentleman in town who can actually play double neck guitar. He's insanely talented. And I started learning guitar lessons, but I found that between, writing, social media, talking with artists and guiding them and giving them suggestions on things or promotions or events or volunteer work or my home, my wife, my child, my dogs, all of this stuff, my day job, I started taking guitar lessons and I had the attention span of a fish, a goldfish, and I would learn one chord and I couldn't sit down long enough. So maybe it's creative ADD. I don't know.
Is there a kind of music you don't like?
No, because I firmly believe that a good song is a good song, regardless of genre. You can't discount the fact that the Cafe Polka, Walter Osnick's, the Hey Baba Reba isn't a catchy song. I mean, and it's all personal preference, obviously. Some people prefer, gangster rap. Some people prefer folk indie music. But I think a good song is a good song.
So if I locked you in a room and forced you to listen to Philip Glass for an hour, you wouldn't go bonkers?
Well, I don't know. Quite all right. But I always look at music in a different light too, though. I'm always impressed by marketing and branding and everything else surrounds it too as well. Like, so for example, Nickelback. Right? Right?
Yeah.
The most hated band around.
Yeah.
But you have to stop and think, how did 4 rock stars from Airdrie, Alberta become one of the biggest selling bands, in their history?
Right.
They're just a rock band playing cliche songs with fireworks, cliche videos, yet they're bajillionaires. It's their marketing. It's because they treat it like a business and they get how the music business works. And they're so good at it that, when they go to a town, they play a show, they invite radio down, they do fan VIP meet and greets and stuff like that because they care, but they know what they're doing. So, I used to manage a CD store back in my younger years, and the best-selling album we had during my time there was Nickelback's The Long Road. So for as many people that hate them, people are buying it. And I mean, truth be told, it's simple music, but sometimes that's all you want.
Right.
You don't want anything really extravagant or eclectic. You just want a simple rock song to get you through the day. So, but I think, as for genres and types and stuff, I think good music is good music. And if you really, if you open up your ears to trying new things out, maybe sit down and listen to cool jazz for a while. And you might hear a song that you think is fantastic, and and checking out, because it really opens your world. And it, from local music to national to international music, it really, it gives you so much more depth and so many more, avenues to travel down and to learn new things. I think it's a fantastic opportunity for people to kind of open your mind.
Vinyl's coming back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, vinyl's making a resurgence, which I think is fantastic, because I'm a great believer in the power of album artwork. And I think art and music have such a good connection. Back in our day before the internet, I'm just going to assume that you were.
Oh, yeah. That would be a very safe assumption.
But no, that is when you would buy that vinyl or that cassette or that CD, is seeing that album artwork. We didn't have the luxury of taking a phone out of our pocket and listening to the new Who album.
Right. You
had to take a chance. You might, at times people even had to order it online or order it through the mail. But yeah, it's definitely making a comeback. And it's good to see, because people are taking more of an appreciation in the art of music.
And do you think it's also because people kind of crave that analog sound?
I think, I think so too. You have some musicians that are actually recording in that style as well too. But I think it's also the collectability of it, and to have an actual, and I've actually had a lot of these discussions with a lot of people, is CD versus digital or vinyl versus digital.
Yeah.
People want something tangible.
Yeah.
They want something they can hold and they can read, and they can, it's the difference between reading a good book or spending 3 hours on Facebook. Some people just want to relax and read a good book, and let your imagination go. Same with vinyl. You want to put on a good vinyl record, look at the artwork, and just relax.
Have you ever held a 78 in your hand?
I haven't.
No? Have you not?
No.
Am I the only person in this province that actually has 78s? I still do.
That's crazy.
Oh, yeah. They're like platters. They're heavy beasts.
It's funny, though, now, because you look at there's a couple local artists, Blake Berglund, who's a country troubadour, and Belle Plaine. You may be familiar with Belle Plaine. People are referring to them as Ian and Sylvia, Ian Tyson of Saskatchewan, because they actually have teamed up and they just released a 7-inch where they cover 2 songs from Saskatoon Zachary Lucky, one of which is a song called Saskatchewan, which is fantastic. It should be our provincial theme song, but that's just my personal opinion. But anyway, when they release the 7-inch, they're going on a tour right now. It's getting great reception, but you can actually buy the 7-inch, and on the 7-inch is a code for a download. So they recognize that people want that tangible product and that art is important, but they also recognize that I want to listen to this while I'm driving in my car or while I'm working. So I can't necessarily take that 7-inch and play it in my car nowadays, or I can't take it to work and put it on my turntable and play it. It wouldn't, be feasible. But so I think it's important, to have both options available for people, but it's great to see it coming back. I've actually been to shows where cassettes are coming back.
Really?
Yes.
That's weird.
Because
because they deteriorate.
And who has a cassette player? I mean, if you're fortunate,
as I raise my finger reluctantly, it's true. The only thing I don't have is an 8-track.
Right.
Now that's not coming back.
Well, yeah, I think the cassette is more of a novelty thing right now. But yeah, I guess,
still have Wham on cassette,
which is fantastic.
Wake Me Up Before You Go. Yeah.
If you, if you have a certain vehicles still, older model vehicles still have cassette. But it's funny though, because now with technology and music, for example, I borrowed my father-in-law's truck recently, and I had this CD in my hand, and I thought, it's a brand new truck. This is perfect. I'm going to play this brand new CD in this truck. And I went into the truck, and there was no CD player. It was all Bluetooth.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, it's funny. It's finding what. It really is a matter too of figuring out your demographic and how they want to absorb music and how they want that music. Having different avenues for people, whether it be vinyl or whether it be cassette or digital, but having options for people and seeing what's selling and what people are enjoying, and then kind of focusing on that. It's hard because you find too nowadays there are artists I know personally that have 500 albums in their basement that they just can't sell. Which is unfortunate because everything's gone so digital. So it's a matter of determining, do you need that physical copy at your shows or download cards, or how do you plan to do it? But I think it all depends. With what Bell and Blake are doing, it's such a unique, novel concept. They're really going back to the 1950s, 1960s country music, right? So since they're doing that approach, why wouldn't you have vinyl? Because that was big back in those days,
right.
And and to the fact that they're covering another country artist is totally something that was done in, in traditional country times, right? So I think it just kind of makes sense for what they're doing.
Hence the phrase, everything old is new again.
Right, exactly. That's exactly it. Yeah, so it's interesting to watch.
I hope you're enjoying this episode. Did you know that all episodes of SaskScapes can be downloaded or streamed for free? You can find us in the iTunes Store, on Stitcher Radio, and at iHeartCulture.ca. And I'm so excited to announce that SaskScapes now has its own app for both Apple and Android devices. Head over to the App Store or Google Play and have SaskScapes at your fingertips with just one easy tap. Remember, we love hearing from you with your feedback in the review section. And now, back to the podcast. Apart from Archie, who are you a fan of as an adult in the world of cartoon strip?
I completely lost touch. And rumor has it, didn't Archie get killed recently too?
Apparently, yeah.
That is extremely depressing.
Yeah.
But I think actually, to tie it in, there's a rumor going around, I think next year, that they're going to be releasing an Archie comic with the Ramones featured in it.
I heard that as well.
Which I think is genius.
Yeah.
Because if there was a band that you could put into a cartoon,
yeah,
it'd be the Ramones. But I've completely lost touch with cartoons. My reading now consists of music autobiographies, whether it's Cash by Johnny Cash or Commando by Johnny Ramone. But it's few and far between. As mentioned earlier, I have such creative ADD that I don't give myself time to read or play guitar or the stuff I should be doing.
But you strike me as a Far Side.
I know, yeah, Far Side's a good cartoon, but yeah, I just haven't really. I don't know. I've kind of lost touch with cartoons. I actually, some nights, there's been a couple times where I've put pencil back to paper and just played around. And it's really quite fun to do that again.
You're not going to pen a graphic novel?
No, I'll let the more talented people do that. That's for sure.
No. What?
Speaking of which, there is a gentleman named Jason Sylvester in town who has written recently Strange Stories of Saskatchewan, a book. But they did a book about Saskatchewan, like random Saskatchewan facts and stuff too, which are very interesting. There's actually a comedy book too, cartoon illustrated, called You Might Be From Saskatchewan If.
Oh, yeah.
Which is really good. It talks about, they're just such funny observations and with good artwork, stuff like the fact that Circle Drive in Saskatoon isn't really a circle and Ring Road in Regina isn't really a ring.
Right.
Just witty observations.
Things like bunny hugs, I think.
Yeah, like where did that come from?
Yeah.
Right? And references to like Putnam's Prairie Emporium and stuff like that. I think it's fantastic.
You love this province.
I do. And I'm also invested too in the history of the province. I'm very, I get excited by going to the legislative building and seeing Walter Scott's signature. It's fascinating. Learning the history of Government House, Amédée Forget and that whole history, and the fact that their first child was actually a pet monkey, that ran around the house and all the stories that are told and, from everything really in the province. I'm one of those guys that if I have the opportunity to go on a road trip alone, it took me 4 hours to get to Saskatoon. Because I would stop. If I saw a point of interest, I would stop and read it. If I saw something of general interest to me, I would stop and check it out and take pictures of it. Because, we have such a diversity in this province. A lot of people, you don't recognize the fact that there's sand dunes in this province.
I know. Rock Glen, I was there last year. Unbelievable.
You go down the Wood Mountain area. It is truly cowboy country. Where Bengoff is, the gateway to the Big Muddy, where the Gateway Festival is held, with Castle Butte.
Yeah.
In that one time, that was, they say, a path where horse thieves would hide out from the States. And it was based loosely off like the Pony Express. They'd have this pathway that come through and just fascinating stories like that. And then you can also, all of a sudden you're in the forests of Hudson Bay, right? And, there's so much diversity and so many unique qualities about this province, from the historic nature of Moose Jaw, right? To the valley, the Coppell Valley is completely beautiful. Right to here in Regina, one of the nicest things I've ever seen in the city is if you're ever fortunate enough or unfortunate enough to be at Wascana Park at about 5-6 in the morning when the sun comes up. Absolutely beautiful. Highly recommended. So, yeah, there's a lot. I mean, there's a lot of great, not only great stories, but there's a lot of visual. I think it's a fantastic province. You have ghost towns that have wonderful stories to tell. We have music that is second to none, and all these great musicians making all these all this great success and the arts and everything. There's a lot to absorb in this province, and I think it's fascinating.
I'm fascinated by those leaning barns that you see as you drive along the road,
Yeah,
and how they actually can still stand, and to know that there's a history behind the fact that was once a farm.
I know, hey?
And that's what's left, and
completely.
Who lived there.
Yeah, my grandfather had one of those too, and eventually just one day they fall. That's a good point too, is I'm really impressed, by the DIY ethic of the people that lived here before us, back in the days before internet and so on. If you wanted a barn, you just built it yourself. Yeah. The Western Development Museum in Moose Jaw is really quite something. It's transportation based. They have the steam locomotive, but they also have, cars that somebody decided they loved a car model, so they built their own. Right. Nowadays, that's a rare thing. Somebody my age, I couldn't even imagine one of my friends saying, well, I really love this car, so I'm just going to go to the garage and build a brand new one.
Right. Because
we are so distracted, and we're so, everything is so, it's such a 9-to-5 rush, that we don't have this quiet time where we just take time to focus on our crafts and do what we do good and build barns that last 40 years.
Yeah.
And lean. It's fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah. But you've not had any desire to live anywhere else in the country, or have you?
No. Growing up in small town Saskatchewan, moving to the Bright Lights big city, you kind of make where you are home. We come from a fantastic community. There's something to be said. I always loved, for example, driving into Strasbourg, and every person you pass on the highway, regardless of if you know them or not, will wave at you. How thoughtful is that?
Yeah,
Who does that?
Yeah, right.
When's the last time you went shopping, in Toronto and just waved at somebody?
Yeah, not.
Right? It's a rare thing. It's that mentality. And, when I fell in love and, had a child and bought a home, it really solidified, that I'm going to stay. But I have no reason to leave. I'm comfortable touring away and visiting other places and stuff like that. But this is my home, and this is where I love. And sometimes you got to embrace it. And when a lot of people, what they don't do is take the time to recognize the beautiful things around them where they live.
Right.
So many people hate traffic congestion. They don't like, some political decision or whatever it may be. But rather than focus on that, why not focus on the fact that every tree in this city was planted by hand? That's fascinating.
Yeah.
This is a barren prairie. There was nothing.
Yeah.
Every tree that you drive by, somebody physically planted. Like how amazing is that? And just kind of, and this goes all the way back to music again too, focusing on what you love and finding that music you love, as opposed to saying, well, I hate this music, it's terrible. Well, that's wonderful, but why not find 5 artists you love?
Right.
And listen to it. It completely changes your perception, your way of thinking, and your attitude.
Right.
So.
Speaking of this space that we're sitting in, you've sort of put your own stamp on this regarding the music.
Yeah. Well, Christina, who started The Junction, not only an exceptional hairstylist in town.
Oh, look, there's Christina over there, and there happens to be a chair. Why don't we match the two of them together and bring you a little closer, so at least we can find out a little bit about why this space came to be. Christina, hi.
Hi.
This is your baby, this space.
It is, yes.
How long have you been dreaming up this idea?
For lots of years, and kind of coming in and out depending on where I was at with my life. But over the last 2 years, it's been a stronger focus for sure. Seemed like a long process, and then once it started going, it went pretty quickly. So.
And this is primarily a salon, but you're also wanting to create an artist studio environment. Why do you want to do that? Why was it important for you to incorporate that into what could have just very easily been a salon?
I love doing hair, and I love being a hairstylist, but I think I'm a little bit more driven just by team and community. I have a lot of pride for where I live and sort of the people that live here and what it's all about. So I talk to people and meet people every day, and you kind of come across a lot of talent, and it's kind of hard to get started sometimes, right? And so I just wanted to have a space where I could start to showcase some people in the city and what they do and what they're all about, and just have sort of a comfortable environment. So there's sort of like a rotating space where people can kind of just like come say hey, have like a little storefront for a temporary space. And then also just for people that want to work independently and for themselves, but not necessarily in their basement at home, and they still want the backing of a team and have some creative minds to sort of brainstorm with. Hair is amazing. There are so many salons in the city and they're great, but it's just not quite enough. I just needed that next step just to kind of support the community. And so within the space, I've been trying as much as possible to shop local, support local, and then just sort of, I mean, I'm not good at everything, that's for sure. So just finding people who are good at what they do and then have them kind of star in that. So that's why I asked Taron for music. I don't even know what his day job is, and I've known him for years, but I know he's kind of the music guy. So I was just asking him for suggestions and just local musicians. So it's really fun. We've been open for 2 days, so I've had a chance to sort of listen through everything, and it's definitely a little bit of this and that all over the place, but it's really fun, and it's a really good conversation piece too, because they're all Saskatchewan artists that we're listening to here, right, which is amazing that you're able to get that much music to listen to all day. That's all local. Right. And then it's just proud, like it makes me proud. So even if there's a song that comes on that I have a feeling my guest isn't really feeling, it's easy enough to say, like, these are all Saskatchewan artists, and that's amazing. And it just makes me really, really happy and proud to listen to it. So kind of how Taron was talking earlier about just a good song and not necessarily like the taste or the genre. That's exactly it, is if you know where it's coming from and thinking of people as people instead of just music, then I think that that's pretty important.
Right. Taron, what was your approach on putting this? What's the playlist you put together? How many?
There's over 100 artists and musicians and about 8 hours of music. And so the approach was to kind of go through and figure out what artists I think would be suitable for the space. So, at times when you're in a salon or creative center like this or place like this, you may want some folk music, you may want some relaxed music, but you may want some upbeat country. But then I put a little bit of hip hop. There's some rock music on there as well too. Obviously paying mind to language and such. But I kind of went through and songs I thought that would help describe and fit the space would be suitable. And there's some fantastic ones. There's a Jim Galloway out of Oxbow, Saskatchewan, who in 1989 was in a hard rock band called White Heat. He signed to CBS Records, sold over 100,000 albums, and then broke up because there were so many hard rock bands at the time. But Jim plays like this very laid back rock and roll now, which is fantastic. And it's right from Oxbow, Saskatchewan. You have other artists such as Danny Oliver from Regina, who's a singer-songwriter and a fantastic guitar player. He's actually heading over to Germany right away and the Reeperbahn Festival in Warsaw, Poland, to represent Saskatchewan. And he just has some beautiful music that I thought would be fitting too. So kind of going through Andino Sons, the Andean folk, the world music stuff that I know Christina loves. Andino Sons are not only all exceptional people, but they're exceptional musicians as well too. So I thought it'd be perfect to have them kind of fit the bill. And I tried to figure out like what bands would be a conversation piece. What bands could you talk about and stuff like that. You look at, Jeff Straker's career. We could probably have 4 podcasts around Jeff's career and stuff. So, and I thought,
hurry up, Jeff. Let's get in the same town at the same time.
Get him on the show. And I thought, this would work well because when you have such a great idea to have such a community-based business, well, then why not have music made by the community?
Right. It occurs to me you ought to be teaching a course on the history of music in this province. Where we've been and where we're going.
That would be fantastic. There has been a book written by a gentleman out of Saskatoon named Craig Silliphant. It's a history of the Saskatoon music scene. Yeah. There is a young gentleman named Kaylee Joshua that is actually doing, he's digging up like old 1930s, 1940s Saskatchewan music. So there's some stuff being worked on currently, but I am actually doing a Sask Music Skills Lab workshop on social media and talking to media and getting your name out there and community outreach and stuff like that too. So if people want to get involved, you want to learn about how to represent your organization on Twitter and get out there and get known in the community and stuff, definitely in October 26th in Saskatoon and 27th in Regina.
So that's your main gig with Sask Music right now, yeah?
No, volunteer.
It's totally volunteer?
Yeah, all volunteer time. Yeah, and then full-time I work, I have a day job, I'm a civil servant.
Right. With
Parks, Culture, and Sport.
Right.
Yeah. So culture is in there.
It is in there.
Right. Well, yeah, no, everything is volunteer, and everything I do is strictly through a passion. From helping out with the Regina Downtown Summer Concert Series to Christina with the soundtrack here and stuff. I mean, we are all have the same common goal. Not so much to have a huge bank account and take a bunch of trips every year, but to be happy and content and love where we live and love our days. So if you can help out, you got to help out, right? Actually, Chris from Music Heals had a good point. He did a great presentation, and he had made a comment about that we don't live our lives. We should never live our lives thinking that we have to help others. It should just be assumed. I mean, that you just should. It shouldn't even be a question of like, I really should help people out more. You should just help people.
Right.
So
you didn't play it safe.
No, and I've never really. But it's funny though, because I never considered myself a risk taker. Somebody like Christina who's taken a great, but she's taken a great opportunity in her life and following her passion, which is extremely commendable. I think it's wonderful. I've never done that, but it's funny though, because the corporate world, there's no security in the corporate world either.
Not anymore.
No, I mean, you could lose your job tomorrow.
Yeah.
So why not do what you love, and why not make yourself happy? Why roll with the punches and then in the end come out of it just older, nothing to show for it?
Yeah. Or with regrets that somehow you didn't.
Exactly. And that's what I love too about our local music industry as well too, is that there's so many artists that say, okay, I have this talent, I want to follow my dreams, and they're hitting the road and they're playing these shows. Bands like the Dead South were playing so many shows that they literally were driving through the night to make it back home to play a hometown show that they promised that they would do, and they're doing this consistently where they could punch a clock and get a good rest.
Yeah.
They love what they're doing and they're following their dreams. So I think it's commendable.
Obviously you do too.
To a degree. Yeah, I do. I just, I think it's important to, there are so many people here that do amazing things to help wave the flag of Saskatchewan music, and I just want to be one of them. Creative City Centre has the Empty Room series, which is phenomenal. You have an artist basically play there, and they play to an empty room, and they share a video each Monday, and they promote it on CBC and all this fantastic stuff. You have guys like Jeff Redbeard Corbett, who is a king of local music. I mean, Jeff's dedicated decades to community radio, putting on benefits and fundraisers. I mean, the measure of a good show is if Jeff shows up. Jeff he's the king, right? So he's putting in all this time, and he asks for nothing in return. He goes to work every day. He works a day job, but his passion is music, and he has supported it through and through and through. So, I mean, if I can do my little part to help, why not, right? I spent years, whether it be being a graphic designer, writer, interviewing bands or writing columns or working for websites, like always seeking opportunities. Countless times I would send emails to radio stations and say, can I come on and talk about local music? And nobody would pay me any mind, and just keep pushing for it and finding different avenues that you're good at. There are things that I'm not so good at. So I have a friend who started up her own company in town, as another friend as well too. And she's basically like, do what you do best and get help with the rest, so even if you can't, there are highs and lows with the music industry for musicians. You might play a show to 2 people. But I just watched a local band who's been slugging away for years, a local metal band, and playing to smaller crowds, just play to 1,000 people in the writer's practice field. Huh. Because they kept at it.
Yeah.
They didn't pack it in and say, well, we're giving up. They just kept at it, and they never complained. They never griped. They just kept at it. And they had a fantastic show, and they're doing really, really well. They just won a battle of the bands, and they're working on their full-length album right now. And it's great to see, because they could have just said enough of this, but they keep going.
Isn't there a jazz club that just opened up in Regina?
Yeah, the Capitol, downtown.
Yeah.
And there's some great jazz musicians playing. Carlo Petrovich is one. John Nair has been involved in there. And it's actually based off the Capitol Theater. That was once downtown. So it's a great concept.
Well, that was a chain across the country, the Capitol Theaters, and some of them were absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, and there's actually Tourism Regina has a great blog about the Capitol and the history of the Capitol, right? Like the restaurant and the theater and stuff. If you actually go to the restaurant in town here, I think the door to the kitchen is like the original door from the original Capitol Theater.
Is that right?
Yeah. So, which is fantastic to see.
Oh.
Yeah. So much random knowledge.
It's true.
Yeah.
You must just kick ass in Trivial Pursuit. The Canadian.
Surprisingly, yeah. You know what? You would think my wife would love hearing random music facts all day, but she certainly does not.
Right.
So,
yeah. Is there a time when you just want to turn music off?
No. There's not. No. Because my quiet time, my relaxation time involves music.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there actually are days where, you know, if I don't listen to music, I kind of feel like I've wasted my day because I don't feel as motivated or whatever it may be. Like music it powers a lot. Yeah, no, it you know, as I mentioned earlier, and actually I think Craig in his book on the Saskatoon music scene made the comment. He said, "Music is the one true religion because it gives and never asks for anything in return." Like,
wow, that's
powerful.
Great.
Very powerful stuff, but it's true. And you know, and the people that are making this music that is affecting my life and making our lives better live across the street. So why don't we celebrate that?
That's a pretty profound way to end this conversation.
Yeah.
Thank you
thank you so much.
It was well worth waiting for.
Yeah, it was great to finally meet you.
A chance to finally chat. And Christina, just take the town by storm, eh?
Thank you.
That's a great vision that you have. Taron's right. I had always admired people who just strike out and start their own path, their own business based on a passion. You've leased this space, and now let the universe kick in gear.
Cool. Thank you.
That's very cool. Thanks to both of you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks for listening. The SaskScapes podcast is created and hosted by Kevin Power for Sask Culture. Funding to the cultural sector is provided through the Saskatchewan Lotteries Trust Fund for Sport, Culture and Recreation. For more information, visit iheartculture.ca and saskculture.ca. Music for SaskScapes is provided by Saskatchewan-born singer-songwriter Jeffrey Straker. There's no end to the stories to be told. So, until next time...